Hey, I'm Steve Krenz for Guitar Gathering. Thanks for joining us. We're going to be talking about which pick you should use. Let's talk about, tonight is all about picks. If you're on the other side of the pond, they would be called plectrums. But here in the U.S., they're called picks, guitar picks. And so there's so many. There's different colors and different sizes and shapes and all that sort of stuff. Sometimes it can get a little overwhelming for beginning guitar players of just which one is the right one. Well, here's how to think about picks. Picks are tools. They're like paintbrushes for the artist. Different ones are for different purposes. Different types of screwdrivers are for different types of purposes. Different types of paintbrushes are for different kinds of art. Different kind of picks get different kinds of sounds of how it attacks the note, how it attacks the string, and then projects the note. So there is a little bit of difference in picks. So we're gonna be talking about various types of picks tonight, and if you have any questions, just please type them into the chat, and we will try and get to as many of those later on in the show as we can. So let's just get started on picks. First of all, there's no right one. Let me just tell you that there's no right one. There's a gazillion different ones for a gazillion different purposes. And so I'm going to give you some recommendations here and tell you what these all are for, and then I'll also tell you kind of what the general pick that you should probably be using. All right, so here's the big idea. You want to choose the pick that is best for your style of playing. That's the main focus out of all this. So let's first talk about some of the differences in them. Well, the first thing is the sizes, okay? So I'm going to be reaching down here a lot of the picks that you're going to see are this sort of a shape of pick. We'll try and get a close-up shot as we can. Is this teardrop shape of pick? Okay. Can you see it there? All right. Is that sort of teardrop shape of a pick? Now, this is one that has some designs on it. It's a plastic pick. You'll see these. These are probably the most common that you'll see out there. Now, there are some that are slightly smaller. This is a Jim Dunlop, a jazz pick there. And this is a smaller teardrop. So you can see how, if I put them both together, you can see how they're a little bit different in size. And the point is what you're trying to focus on. This one has a little bit more of a sharp point. This one has a little bit more of a standard tip to it. But they'll come in other sizes too. Sometimes you'll see, like here's a nylon version of that, which we'll talk about in a little bit. That's that standard teardrop shape. You'll see other shapes as well. Like I recently have gotten some picks from our good friends over at McPherson, and McPherson puts this crazy looking pick out. And the idea with this one is it gives you 3 different points, 3 different playing surfaces. One's sharp, one's not so sharp, and then one of them is completely round. So how the point attacks the strings gives you a different sound. So I don't know if it's going to be so drastic on this, but here's the very sharp point. Here's the very rounded point. It's a little bit more obvious on an electric guitar. This one's more sharp and attack. This is a little bit more of a softer attack. Just subtle, but it's a difference. Now, you have different, they can be made, I'm trying to think of other types of styles of pick. This is a different type of pick. This is a wagon pick here. This one has, and you'll notice, no sharp edges at all. This is kind of one that's really good for mandolin, but a lot of bluegrass players use these wagon picks. A little bit more of a rounded sound. It's got some etching in it as well, which we'll talk about. Now there are other sizes, like I got this huge V pick. Look at this big old thing. It's a 4mm. Wow, that's a thick pick. That is a very thick pick. But they come in various sizes. Okay, so size is one of the things you want to think about first. There's even thumb picks. So let's take a look at a thumb pick if I can grab one here. So a thumb pick is something that looks a little bit more like that. And you would fit that on your thumb I would put that on my big old thumb there, and then a little bit of it sticks out. So it's a good way to be able to use, get the definition of a pick, but still be able to kind of function in a finger style. So that's a thumb pick. Now they come in different sizes there. You need to find the one that's right for your type of playing. Use those a lot in Merle Travis style. This is a Fred Kelly speed pick here. This is kind of a variation of a thumb pick, and you'll notice it's got the part that goes over your thumb, but then it's got a smaller little flexible part right here that is meant to kind of give you a little bit more of a point. So the problem with a thumb pick is that it's hard to get fast sometimes because you're just using your thumb. But here it's made to, the Fred Kelly speed pick, what it's trying to do is give you an option of doing, where you can do some strumming or you can do thumb picking as well. Okay, so there's a couple different types of those. So anyway, that's basically the sizes of picks that you need. The standard one is this one. Is the old teardrop standard one. Now, they come in different thicknesses as well. So let's talk about that. You have basically four different sizes of picks. You're going to have thins. They're measured in millimeters, okay? And they have to do with the flexibility of a pick. So this is a medium right here. This is a Jim Dunlop. Actually, this is on the stiffer end of medium. This is an 88. Let me see if I got something a little bit less thick here. Well, I may not have a thin here with me. No, I don't. Let me check this one. I don't usually play thins, is the problem. All right, yeah, all I have is 88s in here. So they're measured in millimeters. So a thin pick would be something that would be considered like from a 0.4 up to a 0.7 or 40 to 70, as we call them in the biz. That would be kind of on the thinnish range. Now, if the medium picks, well, that's going to kind of overlap it a little bit, maybe from a 0.6 up to about a 0.8. That would be a medium pick. Then heavier picks would be kind of like a 0.8 up to like a 1.2 millimeter. Those are pretty stiff. Like the one that I was using here at the beginning, that's a smaller pick, but that's a 1 millimeter, so it barely moves. It barely gets any flexibility. This is a 0.8, so it gets a lot more flexibility. So what are the various types good for? And there are ones bigger than that. Like here is a Jim Dunlop. This is a 3 millimeter here. So it has no give at all. Once you get above kind of 1 millimeter, those are thick or very thick, heavy they call them, picks, and there's no give in them at all. Now, what they are good for is for a lot of definition. If you're doing a lot of fast playing, a lot of very articulate playing, then a good stiffer pick is going to be better for you. Now, all right, so let's talk about what these different thicknesses are good for. If you have a thin pick, man, if I had to play a job where I'm maybe playing a country gig or something, I'm just strumming all night long, then I wouldn't want this big, thick old thing. My arm's going to fall off having to wrestle with that. I'd want something a little thinner, maybe something like this that's a little bit thinner, I reckon. And so I would, because you got to think, it's going across the strings and it's not fighting you as much across the strings. So those are good if I'm doing a lot of strumming and if I don't want to have to work so hard. Now, the drawback is on a thinner pick, it's going to be a little bit smaller of a sound, but it's a little bit sharper of a sound. Okay, so it's smaller but sharper. A medium pick, that's like this 0.73 or 0.88. This Jim Dunlop, those are good for just average, everyday playing. It's great for chords. It's great for single note stuff. The heavier picks, like this little 1 millimeter guy, this is going to be great for jazz. And if I wanted to do something that was very technical, like earlier I played that piece in which it was more of a bluegrass or of a Celtic thing. was very quick. So smaller picks that are thicker are great for articulate stuff. I just can't get that much definition out of a thin pick because the pick is just flopping around so much. So that's some thoughts on what's better for various things. If I'm playing jazz, I want a pick that's got a little bit more of a rounded edge on it, and I like the smaller pick when I'm playing for jazz. So, all right, so let's talk about also materials. What are these picks made out of? Well, you've got these standard, let me kind of give you a standard one here. You've got these type of picks, which is kind of the everyday knock-around plastic guitar picks. Okay, these are great. You can put, your logo on them, and you'll see them all kinds of different ways. Well, they've got little logos on them, things like that. These are great. These are the typical plastic picks. Now, downside of these, the good side is they're cheap. The downside is they have a tendency to tear. If you really play these bad boys for long periods of time, they'll start to get worn, and eventually they will tear, and that could get your strings and all kinds of problems with that. So, plastic, that's probably the most common. The next most common, I would say, would be these nylon ones. This is a Jim Dunlop nylon pick there. So the nylon ones aren't going to split. They just will not split. So they will get dull here on the playing surface, but they won't split. So that's why I prefer the nylon picks rather than the plastic ones. Plastic ones are cheap and you get them everywhere, but the nylon ones are going to last a little bit longer for you. So, but if you're like me, you lose them long before you wear them out. I generally lose somewhere in the world. There is, in the bottom of my dryer or something like that, there's a whole bunch of picks. I remember they used to kid me when I was taking lessons when I was a kid. They would always have to give me a pick because I never had a pick. I would always lose my pick. And they'd give me these big, huge triangle-looking things, this gaudy picks, and I would always have to borrow these picks, and they always made fun of me for that because I'd always lose these picks. All right, so you have plastic, you have nylon. Now, there are other ones. There's wood. Someone gave me a metal pick one time. I used it on one recording session. Got a very brassy sound. Here's a different one. This is a pick. Let me kind of show it to you here. That is a pick that Greg Voros made for me, and this is a true tortoiseshell pick. So those are illegal now to make picks out of tortoiseshells since they're a endangered species, and they're trying to not do that. But he had found some coasters, some old coasters that were made actually out of tortoiseshell, and so he made a bunch of picks and graciously gave me one of them too. Now it has hardly any flexibility on it, but a very smooth, warm sound. Very warm sound, these tortoise shell picks. Now, I keep my picks. Here's my keys. And I keep my picks in a little pick holder. These are my emergency picks. Okay, so I have my emergency picks in my emergency pick holder on my key ring. And you would be amazed at how many times I have needed to use my emergency picks. I used to carry them in my wallet when I'm wanting to carry them and not do just that, I need a variety. I will use a little coin purse sort of a thing here. You don't see these around too much anymore, but just a little old-timey coin purse, and I put all my picks in there. That's what I use to carry my picks. So there you go. Let's talk about texture. So we've talked about size, we've talked about flexibility and thickness. Let's talk about texture. You don't think of picks needing texture, but that's actually quite a big deal on picks. On these little plastic ones, these are going to be a smooth surface. Smooth surface. Now, what is texture for? It's so you don't drop your pick, because you're getting a lot of pressure as you're going through there. And if you're a younger player, you may have not built up this sort of control with your thumb and your index finger that you may have a tendency to, your pick flies out of your hand, things like that. So that's why they started making them with some different texture on them. So these plastic picks don't have any. So they would have a tendency to flop out of your hand. That's why on some of these, you will see they've got ridges, especially up at the top. I don't know where you can see that, but it's got ridges. It's got indentations, these little bumps on it. And that's strictly so you can grip it better. You can grip it better. Now, some pick manufacturers have thought, well, hey, let's just put a hole in the pick so you can grip it that way. So some manufacturers just put a hole in it. Or various, like here's another one. Here's the one with another hole in it. Okay? Now, sometimes they're made out of, they've got a coating. Now these are, let me see if I can find a, this pick here, trying to see if I had another one. This pick here is a, you'll see these little Tortex turtle picks is what they're called. And they've got this Tortex coating on them. It's not as glassy smooth as a plastic one would be. This has a little bit of a coating on it to help keep your pick in your fingers. Now, for me, I prefer the ridges and bumps rather than the coating, because sometimes the coating gets a little too sticky. Gets a little too sticky for me, and I don't like that. Now they do have other things, like here's that wagon pick that I mentioned earlier. It's got kind of it's almost scratches, and it's kind of an etching in it to help you grip the pick. It's a very warm pick, warm sound out of it. Anyway, so that's some different things on what they're made of. Now, why use a pick at all? Can't you use just your fingers? You bet. I use my fingers all the time. Okay, but it gets, your thumb then becomes your pick, and it gets a real warm sound. Now, sometimes you may not want that warm sound. You may want something with a little bit more of a punch to it. So I'm going to get on my thumb pick here. And so this is good for like Merrill Travis stuff. There you go, a little bit of freight train for you there with a thumb pick. So these are good for that kind of playing. All right, so we've talked about that. Why use these flat picks? Well, here's the deal. Here's the deal. When you're just learning, a lot of times a beginner player will just start and they'll just use your thumb. And they say, why do I even have to use a pick at all? I can just use my thumb. Well, that's great when you're playing Mary Had a Little Lamb, but when you need to play something a little bit faster, you're going to need the definition that comes from a pick. And it may feel a little wonky to you to be using a pick if you've only done fingerstyle stuff, but I would encourage you just to be a well-rounded player. You've got to kind of be comfortable at least a little bit with holding a pick and knowing how to use a pick. So let's talk about a little bit about holding a pick. Here's the deal. You have your hand right here. I don't know if we can get a shot of it here. I've got my hand, and it's like I'm going to maybe squeeze the trigger on a gun. So I've got I've got this sort of a shape in my hand. I'm going to put the pick on top, and I'm going to put my thumb right over it. And so I've got about a centimeter of it showing, and it's in a 90-degree angle from my thumb. Can you see that? It's about a 90-degree angle from my thumb. That's what I want the pick to be showing. And when it's attacking the strings, it's not attacking purely straight on. It's almost attacking, you're almost lowering that thumb just a little bit, so it's rubbing one side and then coming down and eventually flipping off the tip of that end. So if you're going to do any sort of strumming, you really need to be able to get familiar with using a pick, because you can't strum with just your hands and get any sort of volume or clarity and speed. So while your thumb may be great for when you're doing simple stuff, that kind of stuff, but if I really want to dig in, I can't do it with my thumb. I've got to use a pick. There you go. All right, so that's kind of picks aren't really a new thing, really, if you think about it. There have been instruments with plucked strings for, hundreds of years, and long before plastic and nylon, they were using bone and metal and things like this to make these things to strike the strings on. So picks really aren't new. It's but how they're doing now with the different colors and the different textures and stuff like that is how they're doing it these days. What would I recommend for the average player? I would recommend for your beginning player, I would recommend these little Jim Dunlop nylon teardrop picks. Now, they have them in various sizes, 0.60, 0.73, 0.88. I'd say, and then they've got, ones beyond that. But those are kind of the main ones. 0.60 would be in the medium, or in the thin category. 0.73 would be more in your medium category. 0.88, and then I think they have like a 1.0 after that. So 0.88 and the 1.0 would be more in the heavy sort of category. So I would recommend that you get a 0.73 Jim Dunlop nylon pick. Steve, where can I get such a thing? Hey, just type into Amazon 0.73 Jim Dunlop nylon, and you're going to get where you can buy a pack of these for pretty inexpensively. So you can go down to your local music store and pay 25, 50 cents per pick, or you can buy them off of Amazon and get a pack of 12 or something for a couple of bucks. So it's a little bit more economical if you buy a bunch of them, and that's what I tend to do as well. So there you go. That's what I would recommend for the average player. Get yourself a Jim Dunlop 0.73. I prefer the 0.88 because I'm doing a little bit more of a technical playing, but 0.73 is a great thickness to start out with picks. So hopefully that answered some of your questions about picks, and if you have anything else, just email them to me at service@guitargathering.com, and I'll try and help you out. But anyway, again, hey, I'm Steve Krenz for Guitar Gathering. Keep up the great work in your learning, and we'll see you next time.